know. Okay, so there's a few topics. As I said, the initial email we sent out yesterday was off the back of the announcement at 5 o'clock. So the initial point of the webinar was going to be for the self-employment announcement. Is what we've been waiting for all week, not just for the self-employed people, but also to hopefully finally get clarity on where directors, like a lot of you, sit. We have got that clarity now. We've also got the self-employment news. But the other thing that came to light overnight as well, which was quite sneaky because it was just added to their publications and it wasn't announced as such, was a few changes to the retention scheme. So that's why a lot of you would have had another email this morning to say, look, if you're not self-employed, you should still join this webinar. It's going to affect self-employed, it's going to affect directors and companies, and it's going to affect people with a payroll who are looking at the furlough situation, the retention scheme. So I wanted to make sure that all of you knew that, because this isn't going to now, sadly, just be about the self-employment situation. You see me looking down, I'm just checking my notes as I go. I don't want to miss anything important. So the topics we're going to go through is the self-employment income support grant, the one that was announced last night. We're going to go through the retention scheme updates, which again came to light overnight. We're going to go through directors and where they sit in this. So most of you will own a business and be operating through through a limited company, so you're classed as a director. So we're going to finally iron out exactly where you sit in all of this. And then we're going to also go through the grants, so the cash grants for people who get business rates relief rather. Again, there's a few more bits of information to add to that situation as well. So they're the main topics we're going to go through, and then after all of that, we'll go through the questions. Hopefully a lot of it's been answered already, so it should be quick and easy, but if there are any more, and certainly anything specific to your situation, then we will try and go through that as well. So let's make a start. So the self-employment grant scheme, or the self-employment income support scheme, they're calling it. So the idea of this is for before I go into the detail, let me just make it really clear. This is for self-employed people, okay? So if you have your own business, but you run it through a company, a limited company, this is not for you. This is a self-employment income support grant. It's for those people who run a business, but do not do it through a company, okay? So I'll just quickly make that clear. There are parts of this that will then become relevant to directors as well, which is, as I said, why I've invited you. But when I'm going through this detail, this is for people who do a self-assessment tax return and don't just have their own company income on there. So it will be self-employment income, it will be property income, and any other investment income that you may have as well. So the idea of it is if you're self-employed and you run a self-employment trade, then you will be getting 80% of your trading profits, but maxed at 2.5K a month. Okay, and we'll go through the detail in a moment. Ideally, at the moment, the idea is it's going to be for the next 3 months. So April, May, June, and then once we get to June, that's when they're going to be releasing the payments for this. You'll get the payment in one lump sum. So they're going to add the 3 months together and give you the whole amount in a lump sum in June. What you do before June is a different question. I'm sure we'll discuss that as we go. But this is the idea, is that they're going to give you 80% of your profits. Now, don't forget, profits is your income, then your expenses taken off. That leaves your profits, and that's what they're going to be basing this on. Okay. We haven't yet, for those who are a bit more clued up on self-employment profits and calculations, they haven't yet ironed out the detail as to whether those profits are before or after capital allowances. So if you've purchased equipment or you've purchased vehicles, that gets deducted separately on your tax return. They haven't yet said whether this taxable profit is going to be before or after capital allowances. Bit on the fence on that one, so I'm not going to re-advise which way they go, because quite, as you can see over this week, nobody has any idea which way they're going to go. So, but the idea is it's your income less your expenses, that is your taxable profit, and that's what they're basing this on. So 80% of that, but capped at 2.5 grand, and you'll get that for April, May, June in one lump sum come June. So to be able to get that, there's a few rules. So you must have had a tax return for the 18-19 tax year. If you haven't yet submitted it, and bearing in mind that was due in 1st of January, if you haven't yet submitted it, you've got another 4 weeks to submit it. Now, There are genuine people who haven't yet done their 1819 tax return. I have a few on my case at the moment where I'm going to be helping them get those done. That was a situation before this was even announced. So there are some genuine cases, but there is an argument at the moment going around that if you're this late already on your tax return, it seems a bit unfair that you're holding up everybody else who has submitted it, because this is why they're saying it's getting pushed back to June, because they've already now given a month for anybody who's late to get their tax returns in, which is essentially push back everybody else who's waiting on this money. It's given them an extra month to wait. So a bit unfair. As I said, there are some genuine cases, but there's a lot of cases where people just haven't bothered, which is now holding everyone else up. So you have to have an 1819 tax return. Not only that, you have to have then continued trading in this current 1920 tax year. So had an 1819 return, carried on trading after April last year up until now, but you also have to have an intention to continue trading into the next tax year, okay? So if you did an 1819 tax return and then you stopped self-employment, you get nothing. If you did an 1819 tax return, kept trading as self-employed for a few months and then stopped, you get nothing. You have to have continued trading up to now and still have an intention to keep trading as a self-employed person. Okay. The other caveat they've put on here is had lost trading income and trading profits due to COVID-19. Okay. That is a bit of a swing ball for me, because that says to me you can still be trading now if you're able to. You could still be trading now as self-employed and still get this assistance. Okay. So all they've said is you have to have lost profits due to this. So you could argue that you've lost a tiny bit of profit and therefore you qualify. But they haven't said you have to have completely stopped trading. So again, that's quite unfair, because furloughed people, as a lot of you know, have to have stopped all work completely to get their assistance. Okay. So for self-employed people at the moment, the idea is you could still carry on trading if you are allowed to at the moment, and still get this help. So that's the idea. You just have to be able to show that you've lost some profits due to the situation. Okay. So the other detail is your profits have to have been less than 50K. So that was on the 1819 tax return, your profits had to have been less than 50K. Or if they're going to be taking an average over the last 3 tax returns, the average has to be below 50K. The other part of this, which I want to make clear, because I've had this a few times on questions, is that if you have a mixture of income, so some self-employment, some property, some company, at least 50% of your total taxable income has to come from self-employment. So if you've got a mixture, but your self-employment profits do not make up at least half of your income, then you don't get this help. Okay, so that's the other thing they've slipped in there. If you started trading between 2016 and 2019, they're only going to use the years that you've had a self-assessment tax return for. Okay, they have already, that is already a point anyway, so I don't know why they are sort of making that extra point clear, but that's what they're saying. So as I said, if you've not submitted your 1819 return yet, they have given you until the 23rd of April to get that tax return in, and then you will still qualify. Okay, so a few more details. So as I said, 80% of the average profits. So what they will do is if you had 1, 2, or 3 tax returns, they will be added together and divided by the number of tax returns you had. So if you've got 3 tax returns in a row, they will add up all 3 tax returns and divide by 3, same with 2. They haven't made it very clear what they're going to do if you've just got 1 tax return. Whether they're just going to base it on that 1 tax return is all we can guess at the moment. They haven't really made that one clear. They keep using the word average. You can't average 1 number. So we'll see how that one goes. The odd thing is last night, straight after the announcement, they did have that detail online. I've woken up this morning, I say woken up, I sort of fell out of bed this morning, and they've taken that detail off again. So not sure why they would have done that. So just going to go through. So how do you apply for this? So if this is relevant to you, how are you going to go about getting this? So HMRC, once again, have said, don't do anything yourself, we'll contact you, okay? So the idea is HMRC will go through their system. They have all the self-assessments already, so they're going to go through the self-assessment system. They will contact you. They will explain to you how it works, how much they think based on what information they have you're entitled to. They will then pay that directly into your bank account, as I said, in one lump sum in June. So again, it's still saying nothing for you to do. I imagine they're trying to stop the amount of phone calls. They've actually highlighted clearly online, do not contact us. If you try, you're just going to probably hear a waiting tone for hours and hours. So don't bother, they're telling you not to, they'll call you. Strangely, I did hear last night that Universal Credit are now contacting people. They're doing outbound calls all of a sudden, which is odd. I guess just to try and manage the level. But HMRC are saying, no, we will contact you, do not contact us. We'll then explain how much you're getting, when you're going to get it, and it'll be paid straight into your bank account. After that, as I said, they'll contact you. If you claim tax credits, just a little point on this, if you claim any sort of tax credits, this does count as taxable income, okay? Not just tax credits, just in general, this grant that you receive from the government in June, should you be eligible, it is taxable income. So it has to get added to your income in the normal way and is taxed on your tax return in the normal way. It's not free money, it's not untaxed money, it is taxable income like any other income. Okay, as I said, if you get any sort of tax credits, make sure you do add it to your tax credits claim as additional income. I'm going to open up a web page on my side here because there are a few more details that I don't want to miss. So, property. So this is the other situation we have is if you have property income, sadly, when you have basic rental income, you rent out property, long-term lets, just a normal rental income, it's actually classed as investment income and not trading income. Now, this self-employment income support grant is based on trading profits. Trading means a business. If you just rent out property, HMRC don't class that as a business, they class that as investment income, okay? So what that means is your rental income isn't covered by this. You're not going to get assistance from this for your rental income. That is bad news if you have people who only earn their living through renting out properties through their own personal name, because this isn't covered by that. It's trading profits only, not investment income or profits. The caveat to that is if you rent out property, but that property is classed as a furnished holiday let. So for example, if you have a property and you let it out on Airbnb or something like that, that actually gets classed as a furnished holiday let and not a rental investment property. In that sense, that income is then counted for. So if you rent out a property and it's a normal let, sorry, this doesn't count for you. If you have a property and it's classed as a furnished holiday let, so just a normal holiday let or an Airbnb property, that income is then classed as trading profits and that will then be counted in this situation. There is a few more points on this. I'll try and remember some of them, but I'm sure some of them might end up coming out when I go through the questions. But the other point I just wanted to mention is they're basing it on 1819 tax returns only. So even though we're only a week or so away from the 5th of April, even though we are more than happy, as always, to get your tax returns done straight after the 5th of April, it doesn't matter, it won't count. They're not looking at the 1920 tax returns, they're looking at the 1819 returns. Some of you might have already guessed it, especially if this affects you, that if you've only started self-employment since the 6th of April last year, this still doesn't help you. It doesn't include anyone who has become self-employed since, okay? So sadly, you had to have been self-employed and done a 19 tax return, and as I said, still be trading now and still intend to carry on trading as well. Before I get a sort of bombardment of emails and calls asking me to resubmit your 2019 tax returns, again, whether I would do that or not anyway, HMRC have made it very clear they will look at original numbers, okay, so it wouldn't matter. They will look at original tax return numbers that have already been submitted, even if you then resubmit with new numbers. In these situations, it's quite funny because it's when it's their money in discussion, they're very quick to set the rules down and stop people cheating the system. So, as I said, they've put that straight in there and said, look, even if you resubmit your return, we will look at the original figures. So sadly, if you were planning on asking me that, just don't bother. It's not going to help you at all. Okay. That's the main points I have on the self-employment support grant. If I've not mentioned something that you wanted to know, pop it on the Q&A and then we will go through that at the end. I've just tried to quickly summarize as many points on it as I can. I don't want to sit here reading through all of my notes because you'll just be sat there watching me read notes, which is not enjoyable. So as I said, if there's something that I've missed or something extra you wanted to know or something you're not quite sure about on any of that, just pop it on the Q&A and I'll go through it afterwards. So the next topic I want to talk about is the retention schemes. So grab a pen and paper for anybody who has a payroll or has had discussions or thoughts about the retention schemes. I'm going to quickly go through that now. Just have a drink before I actually lose my voice. So, as I said, overnight they've updated the retention scheme, sneakily in my eyes, because there was no announcement, there was no release, there was just an update to their publications. Most of you aren't as sad as me, so you don't follow the publications every half an hour. Literally, they are releasing publications several times per half hour. So this is how exhausting it's been just keeping on top of these things constantly. Overnight, they updated the retention scheme situations. So, and I know a lot of you have already started having discussions with Holly, who works for us at Still Financial, who does the payrolls. You're probably going to have another conversation with her. Sorry, Holly, I know you're probably listening. You are going to probably have quite a few emails and phone calls on your way. I did discuss this with Holly this morning, so don't worry, I've not just laid that on her out of the blue. So one of the biggest changes is you can only now claim through the retention scheme. So this is for furloughing employees. You can only furlough and claim for an employee who was on the payroll at the 28th of Feb. Okay. I'm going to let that sink in for a second because I know this has been a topic of conversation for several people. That means if you've had any new starters since the 28th of Feb, sadly, they are not covered by this scheme. Okay. The other sad part of that, and this has been a discussion in my accountancy practice group that I'm part of, is the sad reality is if you've had new starters since the 28th of Feb, unless you have lots of cash reserves to pay them off your own back and there's no work for them to actually be doing, then by all means carry on if you desperately want to keep them. But otherwise, you could be looking at redundancies. Redundancy as a term and not so much as in money you have to pay out, because obviously that comes under the redundancy rules, and if they're a brand new starter, they're not going to be entitled to anything anyway. But what I mean more by that is you're going to have to let them go. New starters since the 1st of March are not applicable for the retention scheme anymore. So as I said, if you've had any new starters on your payroll and you were thinking about putting them through the furlough situation, sadly you can't. You've now got the decision: do you let them go again and explain and ask them to come back once this is all over, or can you afford to keep them going anyway, or can you just keep them on the payroll and just set them as unpaid leave? That's something you're going to have to think about. Now, this is the other thing, and if any of you watched Martin Lewis's program last night, you would have heard this, but I was a bit annoyed by it because there was a big real life situation that they seem to always forget. So if you have made anybody redundant since the 28th of Feb, you can rehire them and put them onto furlough for the time being. Now, Martin Lewis and the government were saying it's the government's way of really genuinely trying to help. It's saying instead of leave somebody out of employment for the time being, get them back onto your payroll and furlough them. You are allowed to do that. And I've read that on HMRC today. You are allowed to quickly rehire anybody you have since made redundant, put them straight onto the furlough scheme. They are then getting 80% of their usual wage. You as the employer are getting fully refunded for that. The big annoyance for me is the real life situation of that they seem to forget. You have to pay for that. You're not getting that rebate for another 6 to 8 weeks at least. So it's all good and well them saying, look, put them back on your payroll, pay them 80%, we'll refund you. Great. And if you've got the cash to do that, to tie you over in the meantime, then absolutely that is a really good help for those people rather than just leave them out in the cold with no money at all. But as the employer, you have to be able to afford that. So you have to have the cash in the short term. These aren't quick fixes from the government. They're all good and well on paper, but in real life, when we're trying to run businesses and we've got bills to pay and wages to pay, and the bank balance is going down and down and down, well, how do we do that? You know, they've not really thought that one through. So good in theory, but bad if you've got no money to pay them. You could, I guess, take them back on and say, look, we'll rehire you quickly, put you onto the furlough scheme. However, we're not going to be able to give you that money until we start getting the refunds. Now, again, in theory, that is still help for them, and it takes that sort of burden off of you to try and scrabble around for that cash. So if they're happy, you know, it doesn't help them, but, you know, they're not my issue at the moment. There's a lot of other issues I'm trying to help you with. It doesn't help them in the short term, but at least they know they have got that money on the way. So they can do whatever they need to get by for the moment, knowing that there is a wage on the way. So it could still be a fix. It's just not an immediate fix for everybody, but something to think about. There's a few more details that have come to light again, so I'm going to grab the page just in case. So some of you have asked previously, can you furlough and unfurlough as you go? The answer before was no idea. The answer now is yes, but there are rules. So once you furlough somebody, they have to stay furloughed for 3 weeks minimum. Okay, you can't furlough somebody for less than 3 weeks. That is the bare minimum that they can be furloughed. You can then unfurlough somebody, but once you have unfurloughed somebody, they have to then stay unfurloughed for 3 weeks. Okay, so it's 3 week chunks. Once they're furloughed, they have to stay furloughed for 3 weeks. If you then unfurlough them, at that point, they have to stay unfurloughed for 3 weeks before you can then furlough them again. So you can furlough, unfurlough, furlough, unfurlough, but they have to be in 3 week chunks. Okay, so that's one of the other details that have come out. Obviously, there's also been a lot of questions on how much, you know, if they're full-time, part-time, 0 hours, varied hours. I'm going to go through that now as well. That has now been confirmed finally by HMRC. Just going to find the detail. I don't want to tell you it wrong. Okay, so I'm going to go through sort of like a bit of a Q&A in my own head, just to sort of go through questions that you may or may not be thinking. So if your employee is currently on unpaid leave, they cannot be furloughed unless they were put on unpaid leave before the end of Feb. So before the end of Feb, if you put somebody on unpaid leave, they can now be furloughed. If you've put them on unpaid leave since, they can't be on unpaid leave and furloughed. Has to be one or the other. Okay. If your employee is currently on statutory sick pay, so if they're currently off sick, self-isolating, they sadly have the corona, or you know, they've just told you that they're on sick leave and you've put them on sick leave on your payroll, again, they can't be furloughed at the same time, but once the sick leave finishes, they can then be furloughed. Okay, so you can't do both at the same time, but once the sick leave has finished, they can then be furloughed. So that has now been confirmed as well. If an employee has more than one job, again, this has come up quite a few times. So if an employee has more than one job, they can be furloughed on more than one job. But HMRC are not stupid. So if they always had, and as I said, just bear in mind as well that they're basing it on payrolls that existed prior to the 28th of Feb. Okay, so if they've tried to be clever since the 28th of Feb, it won't matter anyway, because it's based on 28th of Feb. If before the 28th of Feb they had 2 jobs and they always ran those 2 jobs side by side, i.e. a morning job and an afternoon job, yes, they can be furloughed on both jobs. Okay, so that's absolutely fine. If you get people trying to get themselves added to a Feb payroll and it's for 2 full-time jobs, both Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, clearly that's not going to work. They will be caught out. Okay, Holly asked me earlier, how do you know or check as the employer? Well, you don't and you can't. That's not really your business too. All you can do is take them at face value. They, as far as you're aware, that they're employed with you full time, and therefore you furlough them in the set rules. If it turns out they're trying to swindle and they've done the same with another employer, then that's them and they will get caught. There's a hell of a lot going out at the moment. to caveat all of these big areas of fraud. This is the biggest amount of money that the government has chucked at the country to try and help. We've never been in this situation. So in order to protect the country and the economy, they are coming up with these constant caveats and checks to do. So you might, keep finding ways around stuff at the moment. You might keep thinking of ideas, but they will catch you out at some point. Not, as I said, not necessarily you, but employees if they try it. A few of you have also asked, what if we furlough somebody, but they volunteer to help us out? Okay, a few of you have asked that question. The answer is, to be furloughed means they are not doing any work for you that is in relation to giving a service, and that's a service to you as the employer or the customer, or generating revenue in any way, shape, or form. Okay, so if they're just volunteering, as long as it's not giving you and the business a service and it's not generating any income, then by all means. What that can include, I don't know, vacuum in the office. I don't understand really what they would be volunteering to do if it's not helping you, the business, or generating an income. Don't really know what the voluntary work would involve. But they said in theory, yes, as long as it doesn't hit any of those marks, they can be furloughed and volunteer for anything but services and revenue generating activities. If you require, and we're going to go into this one a bit more detail as well, they can do training during being furloughed, but it has to be off their own back. So they can choose to just do some training while they are furloughed, and that's fine. If you require your employees to do training during the time that they are furloughed, then that's fine, but you have to then top up to minimum wage or living wage, whatever is relevant to you. You have to top it up to minimum wage during that time that they are furloughed and required to do training, okay? I'm going to come into that point a bit more now, because what's happening is a lot of people are finding out that once they've been furloughed and they've done the calculations, their pay drops below minimum wage. Suddenly that's okay. The government are fine with that all of a sudden. So if somebody's being furloughed and it means their pay is suddenly below minimum wage, that's absolutely fine. But if you require them to do training while they are being furloughed, you have to top up that time just for that. I don't know, it could even be a couple of hours. You have to try and calculate it. For the period of time that they're required to do training during furlough, they have to be topped up to make sure they get minimum wage. If they're not already, they might already be. But if they're not, that period has to be meeting minimum wage. There are some more rules based on people who are on maternity pay, adoption pay, shared parental pay. If you have a specific scenario where that affects you, get in touch with myself or Holly. I'm not going to go into that now. That's quite a specific scenario where you've furloughed employees and they're on maternity pay. Have a conversation with us outside of this and we'll have that conversation with you. Just making sure I've not missed anything. So what is the pay based on? So if the employee is full-time or part-time, then it's based on their contractual pay as at the 28th of Feb. Okay. So if it's normal full-time and part-time pay, it's based on what their contractual pay was at the end of Feb. Part of me is annoyed they've said that. I won't explain why, because I shouldn't. But part of me, from having to deal with all the calls and emails, is slightly relieved, because it's going to save me getting hundreds of texts and emails and calls saying, can we quickly up March's pay in order to get higher amount for retention? Okay, this is why they've said if it's full-time and part-time, it's based on Feb pay. Feb pay should have already been submitted. It's now late if it's not. Feb pay has already been submitted, and that's why they're saying that. Don't come at me and Holly and ask to resubmit Feb's payroll to then up numbers. We're not going to do that. You would get into trouble, we'd get into trouble. Sadly, they've put all these caveats in to stop this happening. It's not worth the hassle. So full-time, part-time is going to be based on Feb's pay, and remember that's 80% of the pay. You do not include fees, you do not include commissions, you don't include bonuses, it's contractual pay only. Employees who have varied pay, So there's a few options depending on that. So I know a lot of our clients have big payrolls where most of their employees are on varied pay, varied hours, etc. If you have that situation where you have employees that you want to furlough and they're on variable pay, this is how it works. If those employees have been with you for a full 12 months, then you have two options. This is one of those really weird details they've added in. You can either look at what they received in this month 12 months ago. So from March now, you would look at what they received in March 19, and that's what you base it on. No idea who the hell came up with that. Doesn't make much sense to me. But if they've been with you for a full year, you can either look at this month last year, or you can look at average of the last 12 months, okay? If they've been employed with you for less than 12 months, you just average what they've received from when they started up to the end of Feb, and average that over those months that they were there. Third scenario is they only started with you in Feb, and they might have even started halfway through Feb, so they might have not done a whole month at all, but they were on Feb's payroll. Then we have to just pro rata their earnings, okay? If you're not sure what that means, talk to me or Holly afterwards. We can obviously assist with you in that when we're doing these retention claims alongside you. The other detail on the retention scheme that they've now announced is that in addition to the 2.5K max per month, they will now also refund you employer's NI and auto enrollment pension on top. Okay, so that 2.5 doesn't have to include employer's NI and pension. That is in addition to. Okay, so they will fully refund you the actual wage cost up to 2.5 plus employer's NI and auto enrollment pension. A quick caveat on the pension thing: if you have employees who voluntarily want to up their pension every month and they have extra amounts through the auto enrollment pension scheme, HMRC will only refund the 3% minimum. So the statutory 3% minimum that you're probably all aware of, that's the only amount they will refund. So if you've got employees who put extra pension through, sadly, they're not going to refund that. It's just the 3%. Okay. Mentioned about the living wage, and just make sure I've not missed anything. The claims, so they've said that the claims can be backdate to the 1st of March. So as I said, that's only relevant if the employee was on Feb's payroll and then they stopped working from the 1st of March. Then in theory, yes, we can do the claim back to the 1st of March. What will happen is the government will let us know when the portal is open and ready. They have said in the next few weeks. So hopefully it will be. Once the portal is open and we've done the claim, they haven't given us any time as to how long it's going to then take you to get that money back. I wish they would have given us at least that for now. I get that with the self-employment thing, that's going to involve millions of people, and that's going to take a bit longer. I don't agree with June in any shape or form, but quite rightly, it's going to take a little bit of time. With this, they've announced a retention scheme early on. They still can't tell us when you're going to get that money. Because as I said, it's all good and well saying, yes, of course, have as many people as you want on there, but we have to afford it for the meantime. So once the scheme's open, we'll put the submissions in. We will then be able to tell you how much you're getting back from the government, but we can't tell you yet as to how. It will be paid directly into your bank account as the employer. Okay. Once the government ends the scheme, you have two options, because obviously at the moment this retention scheme is only going up to the end of June. Okay, so if we hit June and not much has improved, fingers crossed it has, but either not much has improved or it's taken longer for your business to get back on its feet, the retention scheme will finish, and you then have two options. Can you still, if you still can't afford to take those people back on properly and pay it yourself because there's no more assistance, you may still have to make redundancies at that point. Okay, so they're only going to be assisting up to the end of June. After that, it's up to you whether you can afford to keep them on or not. And that's going to depend on your individual business, how quickly you're getting back on your feet, and what your finances are at that point. So once the scheme ends, you have to decide, can they return back to their normal duties with you, or are you going to still have to look at redundancies? Bear in mind, if you do decide to take back on anybody who has been made redundant and put them into the furlough scheme, the moment you do that, anybody on furlough, including those people, still maintain the same contractual employment rights. sick pays, holiday pays, all the rest of it. Anything in your employment contracts are still relevant while they are being furloughed. So just remember that. If you do take anybody back on, this is more of a legal HR side, but if you do quickly rehire, just put them on furlough, you might want to have a separate contract for those employees to try and minimize the benefits that they're getting as an employee. Obviously, there's only a certain amount you can reduce their benefits and entitlements, but you might want to check that with whoever you do your HR contracts with, if you do. And the final point on this is any income you get on the retention scheme from the government towards wages, it's taxable income, okay? It's not free money. So when you get this income in, it's just treated as any other income. It's added to your income for tax purposes. So I just wanted to make sure you're aware of that. It's not going to be free money. It's taxable money that they will be giving you. That's what I have from an update point of view on the retention scheme. I'm sure some of you, I mean, I've just checked and there's a lot of questions. So I'm sure some of that is on the retention scheme. So I will be coming to that, don't worry. The next point, which is probably a biggie and is probably what a lot of you are waiting for, is how directors of their own small companies are affected by this situation. So I'm going to finally confirm that for you. I wish I was confirming with great news. This is one of my big bugbears, so I'm going to try not to have a rant, but I do have the answers to this question finally. It's really awkward now and you're all just watching me drink. Never mind. Okay, so director-only companies, I would say, I'm not going to put a percentage, but a massive majority of UK small businesses have always, for years and years, been advised that once you hit a certain income and profit threshold, turn limited. I'm sure most of you have had these conversations, most of you have made these decisions and are now running your small businesses just as small, sometimes even smaller than somebody self-employed, but you're doing it through a company, okay? And at the time, that was tax beneficial. And ever since, you have benefited from low salary, enough to get your national insurance stamp for state pension, but not paying tax and NI on it. And then top that with dividends, which are much lower in tax. So yes, I agree with the government that from that point of view, we have had that benefit for many years. Now that has always been a bugbear of HMRC. And if you think back, the signs are there. They went from also almost allowing 45K's worth of dividends tax-free. And if you've been running a company for long enough, you'll remember those days, to now just 2 grand. So there's always been an annoyance of theirs. They've gone from over 40K's worth of tax-free dividends to currently 2 grand. But, you know, they've said the good news is that 2 grand will still apply next year. So don't despair. So it's always been an annoyance of theirs. So I'm sort of not surprised that they've done this to us. And I say us because I'm in the same situation. I run a small company. It is limited. I do the same thing where you minimize salary and top up with dividends. So believe me, I'm in the same boat as you. They are not treating us for this situation as self-employed, okay? What that means is they will not be looking at our tax returns to say, what did we get as salary? What did we get as dividend? That's our total taxable income from trading. And then average that and give us that at 2.5K cap. We're not in that pot. Okay, so that begs the question, what pot are we left in? We're left in the retention pot. So for myself, many of you listening, and hundreds of thousands of small business owners who have all been forgotten, we get a maximum of 80% of our £719 a month or something like that. That's what we get. If we might not even get that, if we can successfully claim that we were furloughed and explain how we were furloughed, and I'll come back to that in a sec, then all we get is 80% of our 719 per month. Okay. As I said, that is if you can argue that you are furloughed, because if you are a director-only company, one of you running the whole company, how can you claim that you completely are furloughed and are not doing anything? Who's doing the payroll? Who's doing the admin? Who's doing the emails and phone calls? Who's paying suppliers? Who's paying staff? How can we claim that we have been fully furloughed if we are still doing those things. This is what is a massive issue that a lot of us accountants are now having to face, and we have started petitions. If you have me or Still Financial on Facebook, you would have seen that I've been passing around the petition for small company owners to sign, because they did this announcement. And as I said earlier, for self-employed people is great. This is a big help. If you're genuinely self-employed, been doing it for more than a year, you're still doing it now, great, loads of help for you. That's great, and that does sort out a lot of our clients. But then we still have probably majority of our clients sat in this pot, and we are still in the same position. So we don't get the self-employment income support grant. If you don't have a property, obviously you're not going to be getting that cash grant. And if you are like most director-only companies and you're getting the 719 a month at the moment, you can possibly get 80% of that if you can argue you are fully furloughed. So if your company fully shut down, you're at home, you're not doing anything at all, then yes, we can put through the 80% claim for you. As I said, it's not even a case where you can ask us to quickly put up March's salary for you as a director, because they're going by Feb's payroll anyway. If you then ask us to redo Feb's payroll, HMRC will get a red flag on your account that you've resubmitted a payroll. So they've caught us, they've trapped us. As I said, didn't want to come to this. If you've been watching my other webinars, reading my emails up until now, you would have seen that I keep repeating, I'm trying to be positive, I'm trying to see a good light, I'm trying to help anyone and everyone as much as I can. I've not been charging for it. I've been, working long days, long hours to try and help. So it's quite sad for me to have to sit here and finally say, look, here's the detail. And sadly, the government has had a big, massive shit on a lot of us. But that's where we stand at the moment. Okay, so there are things out there. There are still things you can do. There are ways that I can try, me and the team can try to help you in your business. I'm sure you're all sensible enough to know that there's only so much we can do, but we are here to support you. But that is sadly the pot that us as director-only companies sit in. And this is a quick extra point on the retention scheme for directors, if there's more than one director, then I think you could easily argue that one of you was completely furloughed. Okay, now that doesn't help single directors like us, who are just on our own and we can't furlough us because there's no one left. If there's more than one director, then I think you could clearly argue that one of you was fully furloughed. Who has that argument then as to which director gets the furlough pay and which doesn't is up to you lot. But as I said, that is always a consideration to make. The final point I had before I'm going to start looking at the questions is the grant. So if you do have a business premises and you've had a look into it and you get business rates relief, and so you think you qualify for the 10 or 25k cash grant, this is a bit of a bugbear of mine again. So HMRC have said from day one, do not contact them. There's nothing that you do not apply for it, end of story. This is a bit of a secret between us, because I've actually found that again off my own back, looking through the notes really sadly, constantly. If you go onto your local council's website, they do have sections on most. I've only checked a handful, certainly Bristol City Council. If you go onto their website and you look at the small business rates section, they have a message on there which says, if you think this grant is relevant to you, send us your email asking to make your claim now so we can add you to the list now. So it's still the case that they will contact you, but they are also saying, and as I said, with no announcement or warning, on the website, they have said, email us now, give us your small business rates relief reference number, they've even asked for your bank details up front, give all of us that now, and we'll add you to the list so you're ready to go as soon as this comes out. We don't know yet if there's a cap on how much cash grants are available. I can't understand how they can offer 10 and 25k to every business premises in the UK, which goes to show me that actually there is going to be a cap and there is going to be a point at which that well dries up. I'm sure most of you have thought that yourself. I'm hoping not, because a lot of small businesses are relying on that to get through this next situation. I certainly am myself. As an accountancy practice, our wages are high. It's our biggest wage cost. Accountants aren't cheap, sadly. But I can't furlough anybody because we're still here helping you. I certainly am. Holly and Helen are working every day still. So I'm counting on that to get us through. So I'm in the same boat as you guys. So hopefully you can understand that I know exactly where you're coming from. Okay, so that was the final point I had. As I said, even if you're not Bristol City Council, check your local council's website. I know that Doncaster has it up on their website. You can start applying now. I know, really random example to give, but it's just the one that came to mind. So have a look. If you're not Bristol City Council or Doncaster, still check. You never know. They could have it up there. Not necessarily to start applying as such, but start getting your information to them ready. So I'm going to have a quick 60-second break while you make any notes, grab yourself a drink. I'm just going to grab a drink and then we're going to start going through these questions. Okay, so apparently Boris has announced he's been tested positive, according to Chris. So thanks, Chris. I'm not even going to go into that one. Okay, so let's start having a look at the questions. There's loads more coming in now, so I will try to go through them as quickly and efficiently as I can. So here we go. I'm going to start at the top. So trading profits, somebody's asked about trading profits and expenses. Yes, so trading profits means income, then expenses deducted, and what's left is your profits. So that's what they're going to calculate that one on. How do we apply for the 10K grant? Well, actually, as I said, I've just probably answered that one. So in theory, they've told you you don't apply for it. They've told you there's nothing for you to do. I'm telling you, a little secret between us that I've actually found is that if you go onto your local council's websites, they do seem to have those cash grants on there, mentioned at least. And as I said, just telling you to email them and get yourself onto that list. So you might want to have a look at that. That's from Andy, so you'll be Bristol City Council, I'd imagine, although I'm not sure your premises is, but have a look on there anyway. Can we apply for universal credit and sick pay? In theory, yes. It's more, universal credit is more based on income, so it's going to depend. They have said that if you qualify for a few of these schemes, they shouldn't, in theory, cancel each other out. So if you do qualify, if you qualify for universal credit and sick pay as two separate situations, then yes, in theory, you should be able to get both. They have also said that for anybody who's going to be looking into this self-employment support grant, that you can still claim universal credit in the meantime. One, because it's going to take you ages to get the money, but two, as I said, if you qualify for both, then that's absolutely fine, as they've said so far. I'm PAYE, paying myself the minimum, but on HRC, I'm not registered as an employee as I'm the director. I complete a self-assessment, but I'm not sure what bracket I fall under. Okay, so I think there's a bit of confusion there. If you are PAYE and pay yourself the minimum, then you are on a payroll, okay? So you are classed as a director and also an employee, and you fit into that category of possibly being able to get the retention scheme, the 80%, if you can argue you are fully furloughed now. But if you are on PAYE and paying yourself a minimum, that tells me you are on a payroll. So in that sense, you would come under that category. So a director tells me you're a limited company, so yeah, you fit into that camp. You are one of those, like myself and a lot of us here, who are in the pot of getting possibly the 80% of your low minimum salary, as you've mentioned, but you won't be getting the self-assessment grant because that's for self-employment and not company directors. How do you apply for universal credit? You just go onto line, just Google universal credit. You'll find the website immediately. There's a massive queue online. There's a massive waiting queue. However, it was announced yesterday that you can ask for an advance. So if you qualify for universal credit and you're going to apply for it, you can actually ask them for an advance. They will phone you back. You ask for the advance, and they have said at the moment you get that within a couple of days. Now, bear in mind, if you get an advance on your universal credit, you do have to pay that money back. So again, it's just an advance on what they will be giving you, but could save a lot of you out there if you desperately need that. Can a single director of a company be furloughed to claim the 80%? So We've discussed that a few times, so just to reiterate, because this affects a lot of you that might have missed bits. If you can fully, comfortably classify and claim to HMRC that you are fully furloughed and you are not picking up a single pen or you are not tapping a single key on the keyboard, then yes, in theory, you should be able to claim the 80%. This is the other area that I'm hoping at some point soon they relax, because if they're not giving us the self-employment grant for salary and dividends, but they are putting us in the retention pot, but they're saying we have to be fully furloughed, they have to ease up somewhere, is what I'm hoping. It doesn't make any sense at the moment, because otherwise they're counting us out of every pot. So I'm hoping somewhere they're going to relax the rules or change the rules or add a rule. But at the moment, that's the situation we find ourselves in. So if you are still having to do something to keep your business ticking over, legally, no, you can't be furloughed. But as I said, if you want to be able to argue that with HMRC should the situation arise, then just make sure you're comfortable to argue that, and just make sure not to mention that you did anything at all in that scenario. How do you apply for sick pay? Well, that's done through the payroll. So if you're one of our clients, speak to Holly. Holly will process the sick pay through, and she'll be able to discuss that situation with you. Sick pay, as I said, is just for people on a payroll. So if you are a director of your own company, you can be on sick pay and you can claim the statutory sick pay from day one from the corona situation. As I said in a webinar before as well, there is now an online website where you can actually download your own sick pay note as evidence. It's on the NHS 111 website, I think. You put in your symptoms, out pops a sick pay note based on the corona situation. So speak to your payroll provider. If that's still financial, that would be Holly, as you know. If profit from self-employment income was 15k last year and made PAY income of 8 grand, am I eligible? On that basis, yes. So as I said, the majority of your self-employment tax return has to come from self-employment trading. If you have other sources of income, as long as those other sources don't total more than 50% of your total income, then you're fine. So if it's 15k self-employment and 8k from PAYE, then yes, it looks like you will qualify. The last 2 years before that, you was fully self-employed. So that's okay, as long as you have an 18-19 tax return as self-employed. And as I said, you've kept trading since that as self-employed, then that should still be fine. They're only saying about the 3 years prior to 19 as a way of saying that's how they'll calculate it. So they'll do up to 3 years if you've got it to work out your average, but if it's 1 or 2 years, if it's 2 years, they'll average over the 2. If it's 1 year, they've not confirmed it, as I said, but they might just take that 1 year's income. But the other rule to not forget is you have to still be trading as self-employed now. Next question. We're running a small cleaning company, taking a nominal salary as everybody else is, and rest in dividends. Oh, I'm not sure if there's a question there. If that was your question, do you want to just make it clear to me what that question was, and then I can answer that one at the end. I don't know if I'm missing some of it. Okay, so another question. Can we apply for universal credit until we apply for the 80% of the salary in June for those self-employed? I think I probably already answered that. Yes, you can. HMRC actually have that on their website. I'm not sure if I have it in front of me actually, but I don't think I do. HMRC have it on their website to say if you are getting the self-employment grant and you qualify for that, then yes, in the meantime, you are allowed to get the universal credit. Are you classed as self-employed? I know you personally as a client, so you are one of those who are. I don't think you are both anymore. You are just director, so you are classed as employed. From the 2 companies that I know you're associated with, you would be classed as employed by those companies and not self-employed, as in running a business in your own name and not for a company. Are we entitled to 8% of the salary if we've been just paid from our own business for the last year? Again, we've probably already been over that, but yes, that is the case where you could be entitled to 80% of your director's minimum salary. As I said, the furlough question is a separate one to think about. What if we've missed the deadline for the tax return? So the only deadline for the tax return was 31st of Jan. Now bear in mind, this is based on personal tax returns, not company tax returns. So if your question was based on your company's tax return, it's irrelevant. This has nothing to do with company tax. this is self-assessment personal tax only. So if you've missed the deadline, i.e. the 19 tax return was due back on the 31st of Jan, as I said, they've given you until the 23rd of April to do that tax return. Is there a way to get aid from the government with the new self-employment laws? So if you're a mix of freelance and payroll and don't make the majority of your year's income of self-employment. So sadly, question A on that scenario, no, if the majority of your income is from employment and not self-employment, then that automatically counts you out of this grant. If you have more than 1 year's self-assessment to base that on, it will be based on the average. So you'll add up your self-employment income for the 2 or 3 years. You'll then add up any other income. And if after doing that, your self-employment income becomes the majority, then in theory, you're okay, you're fine. But basically, whether you've got 1, 2, or 3 years, add it all up. And as long as your self-employment income is the majority, then yes, you do qualify. If not, sadly not. If you started earning since March 19 and don't have one for 2019, well, in theory, that all depends, because if you started in March 19, in theory, that tax period would have went up to the 5th of April. So there should have been even a few days or a week or so in that tax period that you would have then done a 19 tax return for. So the problem is you've got 2 scenarios. If you've already done a tax return and you just put nil, then it's done, it's dusted. As I said, they're not accepting reruns of self-assessments. If you've not done yet your return for that year, because you presumed that actually you only started in March 19, so you don't need to do one, well, the good news is you have still got 4 weeks to quickly get one done. Whether that gives you much from that scenario after that is a different question, but looks like there still could be a chance for you to get that tax return in quickly if you've not done one already. All customers close the doors, so no income, no savings. I'm sure this rings a bell with a lot of people here. All your customers are closed doors, you've got no income, you've got no savings to fall back on. Do we qualify for furloughed scheme or the self-employed scheme? No premises, so no grant. As I said, sadly, that is a boat that a lot of people are sat in, so I'm sure everybody can sympathise with that. As I said, furloughed worker, same situation. If you're a limited company, then possibly become a furloughed worker. Especially if there's more than one of you, I would say definitely get one of you furloughed, even if you can't both become furloughed. But no, sadly, not self-employed either. In that scenario, I don't want to seem like I'm just answering the questions and chucking you in the bin. In that scenario, no cash grants, you can't really be furloughed, and if you can, it's for pennies. You don't get any of the self-employment help. The only assistance that they are now saying that fits your scenario is the interruption loan scheme, which brings its own issues. You know, some of you don't want extra debt. Some of you probably already have debt. Some of you certainly don't feel comfortable taking on more debt. The sad news is, unless you can get any other income source at the moment, so whether that's universal credit to tie you over, whether that is going out and getting another job temporarily in the meantime, which, you know, a lot of us don't want to face. If you run a business, you don't want to go back to employment, but think of it as temporary. Think of some as a last resort just to get you through this. So if you have to, then, you know, we've all got to do what we've got to do at the moment just to get us through. And just bear in mind it's temporary and you will get back to your business eventually. But if you don't even want to do that, then the last resort is debt. It's the only situation you have to go back to if you need to. Do you know of any banks lending without personal guarantee? Again, a big bugbear of the accountancy industry. So HMRC have smashed this out at us. Here's this interruption loan, government backed, all this nonsense. I've spoken to several people who have already attempted to get this government backed loan, this interruption loan. It's nowhere as easy as they're making out, and I'm sure probably a lot of you aren't surprised at that. It is not easy to get one of those loans. Most of them, as you say, Michael, they are asking for personal guarantees. As I've said in previous webinars, if your business fails, you have to pay it back. If you then fail and you go bankrupt because you can, that's only when the government are going to step in and just give the lender 80% of what you borrowed. So it still falls on your lap. They are still asking for personal guarantees. Have I seen any yet that don't ask for that? Sadly not. I'd be really surprised actually if anyone ever finds one. Can you let me know and I can share it with people? I've not seen one myself. And I would be very surprised if there is one out there at the moment, especially more so with what's going on. Lovely one, not so much a question, but I'm going to read it out. You're a star, Ben. It's nice to hear that. So thanks for that, Andy. Mid-free universal credit application, should I continue with this? Can I claim for the grant and that? So Sarah, hopefully I've answered that for you already. So if you qualify for the self-employment income support grant, yes, you are allowed to still get universal credit as well. So yes, to carry on with that one. So somebody's, I think again there's probably something missed off this one. It just says various folk I know's position. So if that was yours, can you just make sure there is a question there somewhere, and I'll come to that one. Another question, I'm self-employed more than 5 years, but after 2 years I went for contract in 1819, was self-employed and employed in 1819, do I get paid? So again, it comes back to that question for your 1819 return and any previous ones leading up to that. It comes down to what was most of your income from. So was the majority of your income from self-employment or was it from employment? And that's what then qualifies you. Hopefully it's from self-employment, and therefore you'll be getting the grant. If sadly that most of your income in your 19 tax return was from your payroll job, your employment, and not your own business, then sadly that counts you out straight away apparently. So that's all I can give on that one. How do you prove you're still trading if you haven't done your tax return? Exactly, not a stupid question at all. How do you show loss of profits? Again, not a stupid question at all. This is a good point. So how do you prove? I guess they will be, this is probably the other sneaky reason they've pushed this claim back to June, is that they then get to see, not necessarily because everybody won't do their tax returns between now and June, but they'll start to get to see that. They may also keep an eye on who has made a claim, because don't forget, they might fall for it now, but if they then don't see at a later date that you have a tax return continuing that trade, they will probably come back for you and come back for that money. So how they're going to prove if you're still trading now, if we've not done the tax returns exactly, but they probably will keep an eye on who they've given free money, not free money to, who they've given help to and grants to, and then probably come back for that. And how do you show loss of profits? Again, to be honest, that's a really, really good question. No idea, because businesses fluctuate constantly anyway. It's extremely rare, if not completely impossible, to earn the same amount to the penny every single year in a self-employment business. So how they're going to ask you to prove whether you have to show a sort of substantial loss and drop in income, I don't know. Nobody knows at the moment, but all they've said is you don't necessarily have to have stopped trading completely, but you have to show that you've had a loss in profits due to COVID-19. But how we prove that is an interesting one. Universal credit income from 2 limited companies. That's up to you. I would say at the moment, jump on what you can. So if you can quickly get onto the bandwagon of the universal credit system and get some sort of cash coming in, by all means jump on that. They are saying in lots of situations that it's not going to stop you making other claims. So by all means, get yourself applying for universal credit, see if you can get that coming in at least. Then if something more comes to light, such as the furlough scheme is adjusted slightly, or even the self-assessment schemes gets adjusted for us, because there are, as I said, there are petitions out there. Hopefully there's some sort of change. I'm not going to sit here as positive as I was at the start of the week, because I've learned that means sweet F4. But hopefully there could be some sort of change, but we don't know at the moment, and it's not there at the moment. So at the moment, guys, you're going to have to think worst case scenario, get the help that you can get at the moment, and hope for the best. Partnership self-employment, yes, absolutely. So if you're in a partnership as well as self-employed, remember partnership is just more than one self-employed person together. You can claim universal credit now and then get your taxable grant in June of 3/12 of 80% of your profit. Yes, good calculation, absolutely. As an owner director, getting basic salary up to the tax-free level, would the 80% apply to that? No dividends to be considered. I'm sure I probably answered that several times now for you. This was probably posted before I answered it. But yes, sorry, the 80% would only apply to the minimum director's salary. And as I said, only if you can class yourself as furloughed. Dividends aren't taken into account. So that's that one answered. Can you clarify when we were refunded from the furlough scheme? Sadly not. Really wish I could. It's annoying me just as much as you lot. They've not given that. So all they've said is April, the system will be available. April, yourselves or Holly can start putting in those claims for you for the furlough scheme. How long that then takes to come through is anybody's guess. They have said by end of April, start of May, but I'm sure you all agree that HMRC say a lot of things. Super useful, thank you, got to shoot, no problem at all. More of these, this situation is going to last several weeks yet at least. So any news that comes out, I'm going to keep doing email shots, I'm going to keep doing webinars, Q&A sessions, whatever is useful to you lot, please let me know. I'm just making presumptions of what you find useful. But as I said, please let me know if you want anything extra, anything different, and we'll go through that. Just on a note, before anybody else goes, because a couple of people are starting to leave, before anybody else goes, earlier in the week I sent out a cash flow email. Some of you may have seen it. Some of you probably just ignored it. I don't blame you, there's a lot going on. After yesterday's announcement, that email is vital. Now, I know a lot of you think cash flows and all of that type of thing is nonsense and irrelevant and a waste of time. Please, I'm not getting anything from you doing that. I am literally sending it out because it will help you, okay? So if you've lost it or you've deleted it, let me know, I can resend it. It's gonna take you an hour to sit down, just go through the numbers, but believe me, after that hour of work on your cash flow, and it's really simple, don't worry, it's not complicated work. After you've done that exercise, believe me, you will have so much more clarity, okay? It's not for my sake, because I'm not even gonna get to see it unless you wanna share it. It's for you, it's to make sure that you know what money you have coming in, what money you have going out, and the spreadsheet will automatically tell you at which point you run out of money and are gonna need financial assistance. And then you can use that to start plotting what assistance, how much, when you need it. So please go through that spreadsheet, go through that email, and I really do think it will help so much of you. If you've lost it, let me know, I can resend it to you. Okay, hopefully this has recorded. Some of you who attended the first one probably saw that I accidentally didn't record it, but this one is recording, so there will be a recording. If any of you want a copy of it, just let me know, and I can send that out to you. Income will effectively cease for 3 months. Is this taken into consideration anywhere? No, sadly, that's just the situation that is happening to most businesses, is that business is slowing or for some completely stopped. This is why the schemes are now in place. However, as I said earlier, a big bugbear of the situation is it doesn't help anybody in the short term. So the retention scheme hopefully will be end of April, May. The self-employment scheme will be June. What do we do in the meantime? No idea. The only, I guess the only assistance from that sense that you're going to get from having a drop in profits for the next 3 months is that your tax return will be lower. Is literally the only silver lining on that I can give you. But if your income is now dropped, either completely or partly or fully, the only caveat is you're only going to be eventually taxed on what you've made. So there'll just be no tax to pay on that. Doesn't help you in the meantime, I know, but that's the only outcome of that. Is personal tax being deferred? Yes. So if you didn't read an earlier email this week, what they've announced is VAT payments are being deferred between now and June. And also, if you're a higher income taxpayer, not bracket wise, but if you earn more than £1,000 of tax, sorry, start that one again. If you have to pay more than £1,000 of tax, you're aware that you have to make a payment on account towards the following bill. So what they've said is, if on last year's tax return you found out that you had a payment on account to make this July, that has been pushed back to January. So if you had a payment on account for your personal tax coming up in July, you don't have to pay that. You can pay, you've got until the 31st of Jan to make that payment. Can we top up some employees to 100% and pay others the 80%? In theory, yes. In theory, yes, is probably as deep as I'm going to go with that one. In theory, there is no rule stated yet to say that you have to have a blanket approach to everybody. So in theory, you can top up some to 100% and just keep some at the minimum 80%. I'm saying definitely in theory, yes, one, because it could change, but also they have said that you can bring people back who'd previously made redundant. And for those people, you might just want to offer the 80% so they still get something. So in theory, yes. Thanks for so much. That's lovely. No problem at all. People can be furloughed for 2 part-times at the same time, but if you're trading self-employed and in part-time employment, self-employment income only applies if it's over. Exactly. So we have to try and compartmentalize these situations. So if you want the self-employment grant, you are looking at what majority of your income is coming from. If you want the furloughed income, you're looking at the furloughed situation. So yes, you can get furloughed for more than one job if you fit into that eligibility, as I said earlier. But whether you then get the self-employment grant depends on that situation on its own. So what's most of your income coming from? Where do small businesses stand with creditors chasing payments where funds aren't available? You know, good question from a business point of view. A lot of you run in businesses where you do have creditors, you do have suppliers, you do have people to pay. They are going to be in the same boat as you. So it depends on your own situation, what you choose to do. There are no guidelines to this situation. If you've got the money to keep paying your suppliers, you might want to pay them. You might not want to upset certain supplier relationships. You might have certain good deals with certain suppliers that you want to keep there. As I said, this is temporary. This is going to end. So if you've got the money there and you can, even if you pay them some of it, then by all means try and keep those relationships going. As I said, remember, they are business owners too. They have wages and stuff to pay as well. If you just don't have the money, there's nothing you can do. Believe me, it's going to take them a lot longer with what's going on to take you through small claims court for their bill. By the time they get to that, hopefully this would have been a sort of blurry image in the past. So it would be stupid and irrelevant at the moment for anybody to try taking you to small claims for any amounts owed to them for any supplies they've given you. They can, but it would be stupid and it would take a really long time for them to actually get anywhere with that. So if you've got the money, have a think about it. You know, can you afford to give away that money at the moment, bearing in mind every other cost you've got to keep paying? And as I said, that's where the cash flow comes in handy. So again, I'm going to point you back to doing that. And the next question is, do you need to try and save and maintain that relationship? If you do, have a talk with them, see if you can come up with an arrangement. If you just don't have the funds available, then you've got an option to either just not pay them in the meantime and tell them and explain, you know, be decent. But the only alternative is to get the borrowing to pay them. So it's one or the other, really. Self-employment question. If you're on PAYE for over 50% of your income in 19, but previous years and now you're fully self-employed, are you still eligible for the grant? Will they just take an average? I think I've answered that earlier, actually. So yes, if it was up and down each year, what they will do is take as many tax returns for those 3 years as you have available. They will average them out. And if the average total comes from self-employment, then yes, you will still be eligible. Preschools currently closed. If we furlough, can we pull them back within those 3 weeks if the government announced schools? So the idea is, yes, you can. So if you furlough somebody, the idea of getting the grant back from the government means they have to stay furloughed for 3 weeks. That doesn't mean you can't bring them back. It just means you won't get the grant from the time you bring them back. And actually, depending on how tight they are with these rules, you might lose out on the grant altogether. Because the rule is once they're furloughed, they stay furloughed for 3 weeks. If you pull them back in after before those 3 weeks end, you might be at risk of losing that furloughed money altogether. Based on what they've announced so far, that is probably what the situation will be. But there's nothing to say you can't. So if you desperately need them back in, you've got kids running around and you need that assistance back in, I think you can bring them back. It's just you could be at risk of losing that furloughed pay from the government. If more than one director, can we get around this by furloughing all bar one? I think I've answered that one actually. So yes, if there's more than one director, by all means, fight it out between yourselves, wrestling match, whatever else, whatever means. But yes, in theory, as long as there is one director left to run the company, yes, that is fine. Can you still issue invoices for recurring services if we furlough? I mean, that's a good question. I guess that comes down to technicalities. If you say to HMRC, these bills were set up as recurring invoices and I didn't have to do anything at all, then from that angle, I think you've got a strong argument. I guess from the other angle, it depends on what those invoices are for, because if they're recurring invoices go out automatically, great. But if those recurring invoices are for services, then you're still providing a service. If it's a recurring invoice for work that you don't actually have to do either in that time, then again, in theory, I think you've got a strong argument there. We'll have one last stint of work to pay staff, directors and suppliers, then be furloughed in 2 weeks or so time. Can we claim retention scheme as one of, it didn't need to be Feb. So the retention scheme, all they're saying is you had to be on the payroll in Feb, but the retention claim can only start from the 1st of March. So as long as you're on the payroll in Feb, retention claim can then start from the 1st of March if they stopped working and were furloughed from the 1st of March. So, you know, even if they stopped working on the 1st of March, but you didn't necessarily class it as furloughed because it didn't exist at that point, what they're saying is as long as that employee stopped doing any work from the 1st of March, you can furlough and do that scheme back from the 1st of March. But that person had to be on the payroll in Feb and stopped working from the 1st of March. Who furloughed? What if director and a secretary? Well, you know, that's a good point. If you have, if you're old school and you remember the times when a company had to have a company secretary by law, if you've still got a company secretary on the company's house registry, in theory, that company secretary could keep the business going in the background, and the directors can then all be furloughed. The next question is, if the secretary and the director are the same person, how can that work? Well, I think we're getting into technicalities that you would probably have to argue in court in that case, if it was to be questioned. So if you are a director and a secretary of your own company, you could try to argue that as a secretary, you're still keeping the company going, but the director stopped. But you would have to try and make your own argument in court on that one. Can we apply for benefits as directors when furloughed if we have no income? I mean, again, yeah, in theory, so universal credits, whatever other tax credits you can find. But in theory, yes, you still are entitled to all of that because to a certain extent, and certainly more when now they've relaxed the rules, they're sort of being a bit more relaxed, basing it on income levels that you're receiving. At the moment, we send out a link to the webinar. Yes, still checking, it is still recording, so there will be a recording available. If that's what several of you want, which I've seen a few times now, then what I'll do is after this, I'll actually email out a link to the video. Thanks for the webinars, very grateful. No problem at all, Jane. Glad you found them useful. If we make staff redundant, but the business account is already overdrawn, are we still able to pay redundancy pay? Legally, yes, if those employees are calculated and entitled to redundancy pay, that is still payable. Just because of what's going on, it doesn't mean you get out of paying redundancy pay. How soon you can pay is a different question. Let's all be realistic here. Is an employee going to come at you during the next 3 months for their redundancy pay? They could, and you could just turn around and say, piss off, there's no money. Simple as that. If they want to try and argue that and fight, well, good luck finding any courts that are running at the moment anyway. So, you know, in theory, yes, you are still liable for that redundancy pay. How quickly you have to pay it, in reality, based on what's in your bank, is as quick as you can pay it, I guess. Question here, hi, Ben. I'm not high, I don't know if that is the question. Next question, if I'm a company director that gets tax credits and I can't furlough, should I apply for universal credit? Yeah, been through that one. Will it affect your tax credits in the long term? They've told us no. So they've said any of these claims and deferrals and stuff shouldn't affect other situations. It should be a temporary situation that's happening. But as I said, if you do end up getting any of the income grants in any shape or form, that is then classed as income. If you get the self-employment income support grant, that is classed as income for your tax credit claim. Small business rates relief grant, literally a grant, or is it repayable? It is a grant, it's not repayable. It's based on you having a business premises, getting the small business rates relief letter. Most of you would have had it in the last 2 weeks. It is a grant, so it's not repayable, but it is classed as taxable income. So it will be added as income, just like your sales, and therefore will become taxable income, but it's not repayable, it's not a loan. 10, can you let me know regarding the 25? Do I need to do anything? I think I've mentioned that one, John. So in theory, the councils have said that you don't need to do anything and they'll contact you. As I said, I've actually found out that on a lot of the council's websites, they do have a section to ask you to start emailing them now, get into the queue, get your details, even your bank details, and they'll get you on the list. So John, I know you're Bristol City Council. Have a look on our website. If you can't find what I'm talking about, pop me an email and I'll send you the link to it. Do all PAYE employee wages come in that June payment for furloughed employees? So I think you've got two different bits mixed up there. So the June situation is for self-employed people. So the June situation is where you're self-employed, you're running a business in your own name and not a company, and your claim will mean you get your cash in June. Furloughed employees who are on your payroll, we're hoping that money is coming sooner than June. We're hoping that's going to be April, May time. And as I said, that's for you as an employer. So you've got to try and still pay them in the meantime as normal. It's just you get refunded from the government April, May sometime. And that answers the next question. When is the money from the furlough coming? Don't know for definite. We're hoping April, May, June, April, May time. Is there a date from when you issued your last invoice to be classed as a fully furloughed company director? Not necessarily. The furlough can only go back as far as the 1st of March. So in theory, the moment you can evidence that you put pen and paper down and you stopped working, then that's the date at which you could try and class yourself as a fully furloughed company director. Furlough is all or nothing. You can't be a part-time furloughed person. You're either fully furloughed or you're not. But as I said, it's not necessarily based on last invoice as such, but if that's how you class as you stopping all work, then it would be based on that. So as I said, it can only go back as far as the 1st of March anyway. Yeah, so I guess look at when your last invoice was, which shows what the last time you did work was, and in theory that should become your furlough date. But if it's earlier than the 1st of March, it's still just the 1st of March. We're almost there, guys, don't panic. Although the more I'm answering, some are coming in, but that's fine, that's what we're here for, so don't worry. For self-employed, how will we evidence loss of profits? I think we mentioned that one earlier. In terms of loss of contract, possibly. So I guess that would be a really good piece of evidence. If you have evidence of a loss of contract, then that does seem like pretty good evidence. How else we're going to evidence loss of profits or income? Don't know yet. They've not asked, they've not mentioned, they've not detailed. So I'll be interested to see that one too. Process for furlough. So what happens is, Brian, we do your payroll. So tell Holly who has been furloughed from what date. She's keeping records of all of that. If you haven't had a copy of the letter, we have give template letters for furloughed employees. If you want a copy, just ask one of us and we can send that to you. Tell Holly who's been furloughed, as of when, whether you're given the 80 or 100% or anywhere in between. Give her a copy of the furloughed letter signed by the employee being furloughed, and Holly will then take over from there. Silly question, but if we furlough, does that mean we can't share things on social? Still active? You know what? I don't know. And I guess it depends on whether you're sharing it as an individual or whether you're sharing it as a marketing activity within the business, is probably how I would try and see it. How they can separate the two, I don't know. If I start sharing posts tonight, how they can tell me that was business related and business work or personal time, I don't know. How can they evidence that? So I think you should be okay to an extent, but I can't guarantee it, because all they've said is no services for the employer or the client or customers, and no revenue generating activity. Whether social media and marketing is classed as revenue generating activity, I don't know if they will yet or not. I got confused. If my 18-19 self-employment is less than 50%, but over the last 3 years is over, you're eligible. Absolutely. So as long as you do have more than one tax return, and over those 2 to 3 tax returns, it averages at more, yes, you will become eligible. And that is the amount, that average amount is then what it will be based on. Monthly employees furloughed from the 20th of March, are they paid basic wage to that point and then furloughed from? Yes, as far as we're concerned at the moment. The date of furlough is the date of which that 80% kicks in. So up until then, they should be paid as a normal employee and calculations done on that basis. Just had a question mark on this one. So again, I'm not sure what the question is. It's just a question mark. So for the grant in June, do we apply now or in June, or do they contact us? That's okay. So yes, they contact you, Alex. Again, in theory, they've said this with the other stuff, but yes, they've said do not contact them. There's nowhere to apply. What will happen is you will get a phone call or a letter or email. At the same time, they have said be aware of scams, be aware of people who are contacting you and asking you for information. Just wanted to point that one out. But yes, they will contact you and they will notify you that you're eligible. They will probably already have a calculation for you, and they'll tell you how and when you're going to then get paid. This situation, they have said that you'll be able to access this information on your government gateway if you have one. They haven't said it's available yet, and they haven't said when it will be. But that's the idea, is that they will contact you if you're eligible. Cash flow, Trish, absolutely, no problem at all. I will leave that one there, and I'll send you the cash flow email through. Thanks, Ben. Not great news, but huge thanks. I know I feel awful that I'm finally having to do this end of week webinar and not being as optimistic as I'd like to be. But you know, we have to now start facing facts. We now know what is and isn't available as of today, and we're now just going to have to get out there, be proactive, and sort our individual situations out. As I said, please, please, please do try that cash flow situation that I've emailed out. It really, really will give you guidance. So I definitely recommend that. What about corporation tax? Not sure what the question is, but I'm guessing possibly deferrals. So if the question is corporation tax being deferred? Not strictly, so the deferral scheme isn't on corporation tax. However, they have a separate scheme called the time to pay scheme. So if you are struggling to pay corp tax, which is due anytime now, do definitely call HMRC. There is a deferral, a time to pay scheme in place, which is almost the same as the deferral, just not automatic. So the VAT and the self-assessment is automatic. You don't have to do anything to get that one. But corporation tax and PAYE, if you're struggling to pay those ones, you have to contact them and arrange a time to pay scheme. There's a certain number for that. I think that's the question. No problem at all, Sarah. Glad to help if I have. Is the 25k grant called the RHLG? Yes, so the Retail, Hospitality and Leisure Grant, it's split into two. So you've got the actual cash grant, and then you also have the rates holiday. So if you're in one of those categories, you actually get two bits of help. You get a complete year of no rates, but you also get the 25k cash grant as well. Almost there now. So what if you get tax credits? It says you can't apply for universal credit. Self-employed 16 to 18 and moved to sole company director 18-19. Trish, sadly not. So you have to have been self-employed and have that on your tax return for 18-19 as a starting point. So if your 18-19 return wasn't majority from self-employment, that will automatically count you out straight away. As I said, rental property wasn't included anyway. In terms of the tax credits for other things, can you get universal credit? I'm not sure. You'll have to contact them and see if you're eligible. There's lots of information online. I know it's confusing, but I'm not sure about that one myself, sorry. Can you still receive self-employment grant if you receive income from pensions? I know you, and I'm surprised if you're receiving pension income just yet. I didn't think you were as old as that, but in theory, the self-employment grant, as I said, is standalone. The eligibility criteria for that grant is standalone. If you're eligible, you get that grant. If you then keep receiving income from any other source, as long as it's not tipping you over that 50% of majority, then yes, you should still be eligible. But I'm not sure you're getting income from pension, but let me know if I'm wrong. Complete the application, great, straightforward, perfect. Yeah, all we can do is wait and see, fingers crossed. Okay, thanks, Robert. Hopefully that's all answered. Oh, sorry, Robert, I see. So somebody, okay, so they get pension income. I think I've answered that anyway. So yes, as long as they're still hitting the criteria for the self-employment grant, then yes, they should still be fine for that one. I was going to say, Robert, I didn't think you were getting pension yourself. Okay, great. Great webinar, thanks, no problem at all. Hopefully I've answered pretty much everybody's questions now. That is all the questions I have. Hopefully what I've spoken about as well is enough to answer all of your questions. As I've said as well, if you still are a bit confused, you want a bit of reassurance, you just want to check anything specific to you, by all means, you've got our email. The team are up to date on most things, but also, you know, you can contact them, me, pop us an email. I am urging you to email and not phone, just because the phones are going mad and we're probably just going to miss your call and we could end up not phoning you back because we may just miss it altogether. So if you want anything specific, email. Please bear in mind, I've already got 64 sat in my inbox and there's probably more since. I am going to be working all weekend. What else can I do at the moment? So over the weekend, I will slowly make sure that each and every one of you has your questions answered at some point. But as I said, it's likely to be dealt with by email at the moment because I can't make hundreds of phone calls, I'm sure you can appreciate. But you know, if you email me and it is going to take a phone call to explain and go through with you, then I will phone you back. I'm pretty much like HMRC. Don't contact me by phone, but I'll call you if I can. Okay, just quickly running through the chat just in case somebody's missed my point and asked something in there. Somebody did ask about court tax. I think that was Claire, so hopefully Claire, you've got the answer to that one now. I think that's it. So I'm now going to lay down and have a big glass of wine, I think. Only joking, I'm not going to answer your questions, don't worry, I'm not drinking on the job. Yeah, hopefully you have a good day. You know, if it wasn't necessarily great news for you today, like myself, have a sit down, have a think. Just, you're going to have to do what you've got to do. Work it out, you know, get any income from any way that you can at the time being if you're struggling, be that government assistance, be that a temporary job, be that anything you can. If you desperately need it, you're just going to have to go for it. But just a reminder, please do that cash flow thing. Believe me, once you've done it, you will be grateful that you did. You will understand why I'm saying it's so useful. So yeah, that's everything. Have a good day.